What if the first civilization left Earth? There's something about the idea that haunts me, honestly. The notion that we weren't first. That before our cities rose, before our first fires were lit in cave mouths, before we even learned to speak in the way we think of speaking now, someone else was here. And then they left. Not died out, not collapsed into ruin and dust the way civilizations usually do. They left. I mean really left. Packed up, or maybe didn't even need to pack, and went somewhere else, somewhere up, or out, or into a direction we don't have a word for yet. It's the kind of thought that arrives late at night, when you're lying there and sleep won't come, and your mind starts wandering down strange paths. You know the feeling. That restless state where ideas connect in ways they wouldn't during the bright, rational hours of daylight. But what if it's not just a strange thought? What if there's something to it? Let me start somewhere concrete, somewhere we can hold on to. The archaeologists found the layer in 2031. Or was it 2032? I forget now. Doesn't matter much. What matters is what they found, or rather, what they didn't find where they expected to find it. They were digging in Ethiopia, the Afar Triangle to be specific, that brutal, beautiful landscape where the earth itself seems to be tearing apart, where three tectonic plates meet and argue with each other in slow geological time. Hot, unforgiving, the kind of place where you taste dust with every breath and the sun doesn't forgive carelessness. One of the team leaders, I remember her name was Dr. Amara something, can't recall the last name. She was looking for early hominid fossils, standard work, the kind of patient, meticulous digging that most people would find unbearably tedious. Brushing away sediment grain by grain, recording everything, taking photos from 17 different angles. They found the usual things at first. Stone tools, some bones, evidence of ancient water sources, the landscape of deep time slowly revealing itself. Then they hit the gap. Not a gap in the rock exactly. The strata were continuous, but there was this layer, about 4 centimeters thick, where nothing made sense. The isotope ratios were wrong. The mineral composition was off in a way none of them could explain. And strangest of all, there were these microscopic structures, geometric, too regular to be natural, too regular by far. Dr. Amara sent samples to 14 different labs. Nobody could explain them. Or rather, everyone explained them differently, and none of the explanations quite worked. Contamination, some said. But contamination from what? And how could contamination create such precise geometric patterns? The layer dated to approximately 847 million years ago, give or take a few million years, of course. Dating that far back is more art than science in some ways, but somewhere in that neighborhood, the late Tonian period technically, long, long before anything we'd recognize as complex life walked on land, before there was much land to walk on, really. This was a time when the most advanced life on Earth were things like algae and bacteria, maybe some early sponges in the oceans, nothing with a brain, nothing with hands, nothing that could build. And yet, I should back up, tell this properly, or at least try to. The thing about deep time, and I mean really deep time, not just thousands or millions, but hundreds of millions of years, is that it erases. Almost everything gets erased, ground up by plate tectonics, melted, subducted, recycled. The Earth is a great engine of forgetting. Think about it this way. If our current civilization collapsed tomorrow and humanity went extinct, what would remain in, say, 100 million years? Not much. The pyramids would be gone, ground to nothing by erosion and geological processes. Same with every building, every road, every monument. Even Mount Rushmore would be a vague lump at best. Glass might persist in certain forms, melted and transformed. Some plastics, maybe, in weird chemical signatures in rock layers. Radioactive isotopes from our nuclear age would leave a trace. a spike in certain elements that shouldn't be there naturally. But actual structures? Artifacts? Things you could point to and say, yes, this was made by intelligent hands? Gone. Utterly gone. So if there was a civilization before us, long before us, how would we even know? The answer is, we probably wouldn't. Unless we got very, very lucky. Unless we happened to dig in exactly the right place and found exactly the right kind of evidence that somehow survived hundreds of millions of years of geological churning. Or unless they left something designed to last, designed to be found. There's an old story. I heard it from my grandmother, actually, back when I was small. We were sitting on her porch. This was in Vermont, late summer, and the crickets were starting their evening song. That particular sound that means summer's ending soon, though you don't want to admit it yet. She told me that the earth has been alive many times, not just with us, with others before us, and that each time the world turns and changes, and the new ones forget the old ones. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she might comment on the weather or the neighbor's garden. "How do you know?" I asked. I was maybe 8 or 9. She smiled. "Don't know. But it makes sense, doesn't it? All this time, all this space. Seems wasteful for it to only happen once." I think about that conversation sometimes. Her practical wisdom, the way she stated strange things as if they were obvious truths. Maybe they are. Let me tell you about the Silurian hypothesis. It's not really about Silurians. That's just a cheeky reference to Doctor Who. The actual hypothesis, proposed by astrophysicist Adam Frank and climatologist Gavin Schmidt in 2018, asks a serious question. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years before humans, would we be able to detect it? Their answer, after serious analysis, maybe not. The geological record gets thinner the further back you go. Sediments are lost, transformed, destroyed. Even something as massive as our current industrial civilization might leave only the faintest traces after 100 million years. Some unusual isotope ratios, weird spikes in certain elements, carbon signatures that don't quite fit natural patterns. In other words, the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Not when you're dealing with timescales this vast. It's unsettling, that idea. That entire histories could exist in Earth's past and we'd never know. Entire rises and falls. Entire stories of beings who looked up at the stars and wondered, just like we do. And then vanished so completely that even their bones turned to nothing. But what if they didn't vanish? What if they left? That's the question that interests me, because there's a difference, a profound difference, between extinction and departure. Extinction is the usual story. It's what happened to the dinosaurs, to the trilobites, to 99.9% of all species that ever lived. The world changes, and you can't adapt fast enough, and you die. Your line ends. Time moves on without you. But departure is intentional. Departure means you saw something coming, or you wanted something else, or you simply outgrew your cradle. Departure means you might come back. There's this thing I noticed when I was studying old myths. I used to do that in college, comparative mythology, ancient texts, that kind of thing. Probably seems impractical now, but I found it fascinating. Still do, honestly. Anyway, there's this pattern that shows up across multiple cultures that had no contact with each other. Stories about beings who came from the sky or the sea, taught humanity various arts and sciences, and then left again, promising sometimes to return. The Dogon people of Mali talked about visitors from Sirius. The ancient Sumerians wrote about the Anunnaki. The Hopi have their stories of the sky people. The ancient Indians described Vimanas, flying vehicles in the Sanskrit epics. The list goes on. Now, the easy explanation is that these are just myths. Humans trying to make sense of natural phenomena, creating stories to explain the inexplicable. Gods and ancestors and teaching spirits. standard mythology stuff. But what if, and I'm just asking the question here, what if some of these stories are garbled memories? Not of aliens from other planets, but of Earth's own previous inhabitants. Beings who reached a technological level we're only now approaching, or perhaps surpassing. Beings who then left. Time distorts memory. Oral traditions shift and change. 1,000 years is enough to turn history into legend. 10,000 years turns legend into myth. 100,000 years? 1,000,000? By then, facts become stories. Stories become symbols. And maybe, just maybe, some fragment of truth remains, buried in the metaphor. Let's think practically for a moment. Actually, let's think impractically, but in a structured way. If you were a civilization that decided to leave Earth, maybe because you'd outgrown it, or because you saw a catastrophe coming, or simply because you wanted to see what else was out there, how would you do it? The obvious answer is space travel. Build ships, leave the planet, head elsewhere. Mars, maybe, or further, the moons of Jupiter, another star system entirely. But there's a problem with that scenario, at least for a civilization arising millions of years ago. The problem is, we should still see evidence. Not of the civilization necessarily, that might be erased, but of space travel itself. Launching things into orbit leaves traces, a lot of traces, debris, satellites. Eventually, some of that debris falls back down. And metal alloys, particularly the exotic ones you'd need for serious spacecraft, don't just disappear. They might be transformed, but they'd leave chemical signatures. And yet we don't see that. No strange aluminum-titanium alloys in unexpected rock layers. No refined plutonium where it shouldn't be. No evidence of large-scale space launches, which means either there was no previous civilization, or they left some other way. Some other way. I need to pause here. Get some tea or something. My mind's wandering and I want to keep this clear. Actually, you know what? Let me tell you about my neighbor. This is relevant, I promise. His name is Michael, older guy, maybe 70, 75. Retired physicist. Worked at CERN for a while, then various universities. Smart in that particular way where he can explain quantum mechanics using metaphors about coffee and donuts, and somehow it actually makes sense. We were talking once, this was last autumn I think, leaves just starting to turn, and he mentioned something that stuck with me. We were discussing the Fermi paradox, that old question of, where is everybody? If the universe is so vast and so old, why haven't we seen any evidence of other intelligent life? Maybe, he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with careful precision, maybe the answer is that advanced civilizations don't actually travel through space much. Maybe they go somewhere else entirely. Where? I asked. He shrugged. Different dimensions? Digital substrates? Maybe they figure out how to exist in ways that don't require physical bodies or planets. Why travel thousands of light years to another rock when you could just transcend? Leave the physical universe behind for something else. Something better suited to consciousness once you've figured out what consciousness actually is. I thought he was being whimsical, half joking. But the more I think about it, the more it makes a strange kind of sense. What if the first civilization didn't leave Earth by going up? What if they left by going in? Not inward to the planet's core, though that's an interesting idea too, but inward, into dimensions or spaces or modes of existence that intersect with our reality, but aren't quite part of it. I know how this sounds, trust me. It sounds like pseudo-scientific nonsense or bad science fiction, but hear me out. We know that reality has more layers than we normally perceive. Quantum mechanics tells us that. Particles exist in multiple states until observed. Things can be entangled across vast distances. The universe, at its smallest scales, is deeply weird in ways that violate our common sense. And we know that human perception is limited. We see only a narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. We hear only certain frequencies. Whole swaths of reality exist that we can't directly perceive without instruments. Dogs hear sounds we can't. Bees see ultraviolet. Sharks sense electrical fields. Each species lives in its own sensory bubble, perceiving a version of reality shaped by its particular evolutionary history and biological constraints. So who's to say there aren't entire domains of existence that we simply can't perceive? Not because they're far away, but because we lack the apparatus, biological or technological, to detect them. And if you were a civilization that had progressed far enough, maybe you'd figure out how to access those domains, how to transfer your existence there, how to step sideways out of the physical universe into something else. Why would you do that? Well, why not? If physical existence is limiting, bound by the speed of light, by entropy, by the eventual heat death of the universe, and you found a way to exist in a mode not subject to those constraints, wouldn't you take it? There's a story from Tibet, old, very old, about certain practitioners who achieved what they called the rainbow body. The idea was that after a lifetime of specific practices, meditation, contemplation, physical austerities, a person could transform their physical body entirely. Not die in the usual sense, but dissolve, transmute, leave nothing behind but light and, sometimes, hair and nails, which apparently don't make the transition. Fanciful, right? The kind of thing you dismiss as religious mythology, except there are documented cases, recent ones, 20th century. Witnesses who saw bodies shrinking, glowing, dissolving over the course of days until nothing remained but a pile of clothes. Now, I'm not saying this was literally people transcending physical reality. Could be something else entirely. Misperception, fraud, mass delusion. The human mind is good at tricking itself. But what if stories like this, and there are similar stories in other traditions all over the world, what if they're echoes? Distant echoes of something that was once understood more clearly. A technology, or a practice, or a method that an earlier people had mastered and then took with them when they left, leaving behind only stories, rumors, practices that sort of work but nobody quite remembers why. Let me ground this again. Bring it back to something tangible, that layer in Ethiopia, those geometric structures. Dr. Amara's team eventually brought in a specialist in crystallography, and he noticed something interesting. The structures weren't random. They had a pattern, a mathematical pattern, that repeated at different scales. Fractal, essentially. Fractals are everywhere in nature, of course. Coastlines, clouds, trees branching. But these were different, more precise, and they encoded something. Information, maybe, or perhaps instructions. The team tried to map it, create models, see if the pattern meant anything, and they found that it might be a coordinate system. Not latitude and longitude, nothing that simple, but possibly a way of describing locations in space-time using mathematical relationships. A kind of universal addressing system that would work anywhere in the universe, regardless of your frame of reference. Why would you need that? Well, if you were planning to leave and wanted to leave directions, a way for someone, someday, to follow, or to know where you'd gone. Or maybe it was a warning. We left for this reason. Be careful of X. Don't make our mistake regarding Y. The problem is, it's only a fragment, 4 centimeters of rock, a tiny slice of a moment from 847 million years ago. The rest is gone, eroded, lost. Whatever story that layer tells, we only have a single paragraph from the middle. Frustrating, that. I think about it sometimes. All the lost information, all the vanished histories. It's like trying to reconstruct a vast library from a handful of singed pages scattered across a field. But even a fragment can tell you something, can confirm that yes, there was a library, There were books. Someone wrote something down. Even if you can't read it anymore, you know it existed. And that changes everything, doesn't it? Let me shift direction slightly. Talk about biology for a moment. There's this thing called the Cambrian explosion. About 541 million years ago, there was a sudden, in geological terms, proliferation of complex life. Suddenly, the fossil record shows an abundance of diverse organisms with hard parts, sophisticated body plans, predators and prey in ecological relationships. Before that, much simpler stuff. Single-celled organisms mostly, some early multicellular life, but nothing fancy. The standard explanation is that this explosion happened because of environmental changes. Oxygen levels rising, ecological niches opening up, evolution doing its thing on fast forward once the right conditions were met. But here's an interesting thought. What if the Cambrian explosion happened because the previous civilization left? Hear me out. If there was an advanced civilization before the Cambrian, hundreds of millions of years before, they would have dominated the planet, used its resources, shaped its ecosystems to their needs. And in doing so, they might have prevented other forms of complex life from arising. Not out of malice, just as a natural consequence of being the dominant species, like how humans have reshaped Earth's ecosystems. We don't intend to prevent other species from evolving into intelligence, but our presence makes it unlikely. We occupy too many niches, use too many resources. So if that previous civilization left, truly left, not just died but departed, then suddenly Earth would be empty, available. All that potential, all those ecological niches suddenly vacant. And life, being what it is, would rush in to fill the void, explode into the available space, diversify rapidly, which looks, from our limited perspective, like a mysterious, sudden explosion of complexity. But maybe it wasn't the beginning of something. Maybe it was a rebuilding, a second act after the stage had been cleared. Nighttime thoughts. That's what these are. The kind of ideas that seem profound at 2 a.m. and slightly embarrassing by breakfast. But I don't know. Sometimes the nighttime thoughts are onto something. Sometimes the walls we put up during the day, the be reasonable walls, keep out possibilities that deserve consideration. So let's keep going. What else might we find if we looked? Anomalies. The geological record is full of them. Little things that don't quite fit the standard models. Usually they get explained away, and usually the explanations are probably correct. Nature is weird on its own, without needing ancient civilizations to explain every oddity. But some anomalies are more interesting than others, like the Oklo natural nuclear reactors in Gabon, Africa. About 1.7 billion years ago, conditions in these uranium deposits were apparently just right for naturally occurring nuclear fission reactions. They ran for hundreds of thousands of years, then stopped when the conditions changed. Natural phenomenon, probably, almost certainly, but the precision required for those reactions is remarkable. The uranium concentration, the presence of water as a moderator, the specific geological configuration, all had to be exactly right. What if they weren't quite as natural as we think? What if someone set them up? A previous civilization needing power, using nuclear reactions because they understood the physics, and doing it in a way that would look more or less natural if anyone found it millions of years later. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying we wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference. Not after that much time. Or consider the Baltic Sea anomaly. This was discovered in 2011 by treasure hunters using sonar. There's this object on the seafloor, about 60 meters in diameter, that looks, in the sonar images, disturbingly artificial. Circular, with geometric features, and drag marks behind it, as if it had moved across the seafloor before settling. Probably just a geological formation, some unusual glacial deposit. Rocks can form strange shapes, but they sent down divers. And the divers reported that yes, it looked weird up close too. strange textures, apparently straight edges. One diver claimed his electrical equipment stopped working when he got close to it, though that could be anything. Electromagnetic interference from minerals, maybe. The point isn't whether the Baltic Sea anomaly is actually artificial. The point is that there are objects and formations all over this planet that make people look twice, that trigger that, "Wait, what?" response, and we usually explain them away. Usually correctly. But how many times can you explain away anomalies before you start wondering if the explanation is what's wrong? I knew someone once, a geologist, older woman, very conventional in most ways, who had this theory. She never published it, said it would destroy her credibility. But she told me once, over too much wine at a conference dinner, she thought Earth had gone through multiple resets. Not extinction events exactly, but periods where the planet's surface was essentially sterilized or drastically altered, and life had to begin again from whatever survived in deep ocean vents or underground environments. Some of these resets were known. The late heavy bombardment, about 4 billion years ago. The snowball Earth events. The great dying at the end of the Permian, but she thought there were others. Events not recorded in the geological record, or recorded so subtly we'd misinterpreted them. And she thought that maybe, just maybe, intelligent life had arisen more than once in Earth's history, only to be wiped out or driven away by these resets. "Look at it this way," she said, refilling her glass. "We've only been able to study geological history for what, 200 years? Less? And only with modern techniques for maybe 50. That's nothing. We're infants looking at a vast history and assuming we understand it because we've figured out a few basic patterns." She swirled the wine, watched it catch the light. What if we're just the latest iteration, the latest experiment, and something watches and waits to see if we'll figure out what they figured out, how to leave before the next reset comes? Sometimes I wonder if that's what the UFO phenomenon is really about. Not aliens from other planets, but us. Or them. The previous ones. Maybe they didn't completely leave. Maybe some stayed behind, or some come back to check on things. See how the new tenants are doing with the place. Whether we're going to make the same mistakes they did, or different ones, it would explain a lot of the strangeness. The way UFO encounters often feel more like monitoring than contact, observation rather than interaction. The way they seem interested in our nuclear facilities, our military capabilities, our environmental damage. Like parents checking on children they had to leave behind. Unable or unwilling to interfere, but unable to completely stay away either. Or maybe that's just me creating stories to fill gaps in understanding. The human mind does that. We're pattern-seeking creatures. We find faces in clouds and meaning in random noise. But sometimes, the patterns are real. Let me tell you about mathematics. There's this idea that mathematics isn't invented, it's discovered. That mathematical truths exist independently of human minds. The Pythagorean theorem was true before humans figured it out. It will remain true after we're gone. It would be true on alien worlds where no one ever thought of it. Mathematics is the language of the universe itself, the deep code underlying reality. And certain mathematical constants show up everywhere. Pi, phi, the golden ratio, Euler's number. These aren't arbitrary, they're fundamental. Now here's a strange thing. If you look at certain measurements on Earth, ratios between continental sizes, specific relationships in the fossil record, patterns in geological strata, sometimes you find these constants. Not always where you'd expect natural processes to produce them. Could be coincidence. Almost certainly is, but what if it's not? What if an earlier civilization, knowing they would leave little physical evidence, deliberately encoded information in ways that would persist? Mathematical relationships built into large-scale structures, ratios in genetic code, patterns that would eventually be noticed by any subsequent civilization that advanced far enough to study mathematics and biology and geology. A message saying, "We were here. We figured this out. You can too." Or maybe, "We failed. Learn from our mistakes. Here's what went wrong. The ultimate time capsule. Not a physical object that would erode, but information encoded in the fundamental structure of the world itself. I should talk about the moon for a moment. The moon is weird, really weird. It's too large relative to Earth. Its formation, according to current models, required a Mars-sized object to impact Earth billions of years ago, and for the debris to coalesce into the moon we have now. Possible? Yes. The math works, more or less, but it's also convenient, isn't it? The moon stabilizes Earth's axis. Without it, our planet would wobble chaotically, and complex life would have a much harder time evolving. The moon creates tides, which helped life transition from sea to land. It provides a regular cycle of phases that every culture has used for calendars and navigation. The moon, in short, is very useful for life on Earth. What if it wasn't entirely natural? What if the previous civilization, knowing they were leaving, modified the moon, or even created it, to help ensure that life would continue in their absence? That another civilization might eventually arise? A final gift, or a final responsibility? We're going, they might have thought, but we can at least leave the lights on for whoever comes next. Too much speculation. I know. I can hear the skeptics now, and they're right to be skeptical. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and I'm making very extraordinary claims based on very thin evidence. But that's the nature of this particular mystery. If a civilization left hundreds of millions of years ago, evidence would be thin by definition. Absence of evidence is exactly what we'd expect. So we're left with fragments, anomalies, strange patterns, and a choice about how to interpret them. Do we assume that Earth's history is simple? That nothing significant happened before humans? That we're the first and only intelligent species this planet has produced? Or do we allow for the possibility, just the possibility, that we're not the beginning, but the continuation? Not the authors of the first chapter, but readers who stumbled into a library, finding one scattered page from a much older book. There's a term in archaeology, palimpsest. It refers to manuscripts where the original text has been erased and written over, but traces of the earlier text remain visible underneath. Earth is a palimpsest, layers upon layers, each era written over the last. And we're only now learning to read the faint traces of earlier texts showing through. What stories do those earlier texts tell? We may never know completely, but we can make guesses. We can assemble fragments. We can wonder. Let me come at this from another angle. Think about motivation for a moment. Why would a civilization leave Earth? What would drive that decision? Resource depletion is one possibility. They used up what was available and needed to go elsewhere to continue growing. But that seems unlikely for a truly advanced civilization. With sufficient technology, you can recycle nearly everything. You can use energy from the sun or from nuclear reactions. You don't need to leave unless you want to. Catastrophe is another possibility. Something threatening the planet. An incoming asteroid, maybe, or a nearby supernova. But again, a sufficiently advanced civilization could probably deal with those threats. Move the asteroid, build shelters, ride it out. Unless the catastrophe was something they caused themselves. Environmental collapse, runaway climate change, biological warfare that got out of control, nuclear winter, the usual apocalypse scenarios we worry about now. If you've destroyed your own world, leaving might be the only option. But there's a third possibility, one that's more interesting to me. Maybe they left because they'd simply outgrown Earth. Not in a physical sense, not because they needed more room, but in a developmental sense. Like a bird leaving the nest. Not because the nest is bad, but because it's time to fly. Maybe that's what intelligence does, given enough time. It transcends its origins, moves beyond the need for planets and physical bodies, becomes something else entirely. And maybe Earth is a womb, not a home. A place where intelligence gestates, grows, learns. and then, when ready, departs, leaving the womb empty for the next gestation, for us. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If they left, where does that leave us? Are we on the same path? Is there some developmental milestone we'll eventually reach, where we too will face the choice to leave or transcend? Or are we different? A different experiment with a different outcome? The old myths talk about cycles. The Hindus have their yugas, vast cycles of creation and destruction. The Maya had their calendar cycles. The Greeks believed in ages of the world, each one ending and beginning anew. What if these aren't just philosophical concepts or religious metaphors? What if they're dim memories of actual cycles, of civilizations rising, reaching some critical point, and then transitioning, leaving, transcending, and the world begins again? I think about the things we're discovering now. The acceleration of technological progress, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, gene editing. The way we're starting to merge with our technology becomes something other than purely biological. Are we approaching that same critical point? That same transition? And if so, what happens to those who don't want to leave? What happens to the ones who say, "No, I like being human. I like having a body. I like Earth just fine, thank you"? Do they get left behind when the rest transcend? Or is there room for both paths? The leavers and the stayers, the transcenders and the remainers? Maybe that's what happened before. Not everyone left. Some stayed, reverted, went back to simpler ways. And eventually their descendants, us, forgot entirely that they'd ever been anything else. We might have ancestors who chose to stay when given the option to leave. And we might be grateful for that choice, even without knowing it was made. There's a smell I associate with old things. Dust and stone, and something else, something almost metallic. You find it in caves, in deep places, in very old buildings. Libraries with ancient books have it. Museums have it in the storage rooms where the oldest artifacts are kept. It's the smell of time. I was in a cave once. This was in France, one of the painted caves, though not one of the famous ones. And the guide, a local woman who'd been giving tours for 40 years, she said something that stuck with me. "People always ask how old the paintings are," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the stone chamber. "And I tell them, 17,000 years, 20,000, whatever the carbon dating says." She paused, shining her light on a painted bison, its lines still vivid in the ochre and charcoal. "But what I don't tell them," she continued, "is how that feels in my bones. How when I'm down here alone, doing maintenance or research, I can feel all that time, like it's pressing down. Or maybe up, some direction we don't have words for." She looked at me then, and her eyes were serious. "And sometimes," she said quietly, "sometimes I feel like there's more time here than there should be. Like these paintings are just the surface. Like if I could see deeper or differently, I'd find layers underneath. Not paintings over paintings, but time over time. Does that make sense?" It didn't then, but it does now. What if we're living in the shallow end of time? The recent, accessible layers. And beneath us, deeper, are other layers. Other times, other stories. Not past in the simple linear sense, but past in the sense of foundations, substrates, the deep code that everything else runs on. And occasionally, something from those deeper layers bubbles up. A geometric pattern in a rock layer. A too regular structure on the seafloor. A ratio that shouldn't be there. A story told so many times it's worn smooth, but the shape of truth still shows through underneath the smoothness. Messages from the deep past. Or messages from the ones who went deep, not in time, but in reality itself. Let me tell you about Göbekli Tepe. This is a real place, in Turkey, and it's bizarre. Göbekli Tepe is a temple complex, massive stone pillars, elaborate carvings, sophisticated construction. It dates to approximately 9,600 BCE. That's 11,600 years ago, which means it was built about 6,000 years before Stonehenge, before the pyramids, before the invention of writing or the wheel or agriculture as we typically understand it. According to the standard model of human development, the people who built Göbekli Tepe should have been hunter-gatherers, simple tool users, not sophisticated enough to create something like this. And yet, they did. The usual explanation is that our model was wrong, that human capability emerged earlier than we thought, that religion or ritual provided motivation for monumental architecture before agriculture provided the surplus resources we assumed were necessary. Fine, that works. But it also raises a question. What else are we wrong about? What other capabilities might have existed at unexpected times? And if humans could build Göbekli Tepe 11,600 years ago, what might humans, or others, have built 11,600,000 years ago? We assume the answer is nothing because we haven't found anything. But as we've established, we wouldn't necessarily find anything even if it existed. Absence of evidence. You see the problem. There's a concept in philosophy called the black swan. Before Europeans reached Australia, all swans anyone had ever seen were white. The statement, "all swans are white," seemed obviously true. Confirmed by millions of observations, then someone found a black swan in Australia, and the certainty collapsed. The point isn't about swans. It's about how confident we can be in generalizations based on limited evidence. Just because we haven't seen something doesn't mean it doesn't exist or never existed. No intelligent civilization existed before humans is a statement based largely on absence of evidence. We haven't found ruins. We haven't found artifacts. Therefore, none existed. But that logic only works if we definitely find such evidence if it existed. And as we've discussed, after enough time, after enough geological recycling, we probably wouldn't. So the black swan might be out there somewhere. A piece of evidence, a discovery, that collapses our certainty. Maybe that 4-centimeter layer in Ethiopia is the black swan. Or maybe the black swan is still waiting to be found. I wonder sometimes what the final days were like for them. The ones who left. Did they have debates? Factions arguing about whether leaving was right? Did some people campaign to stay, to try to fix whatever was wrong, to ride out whatever crisis they faced? Were there protests, resistance movements, people chaining themselves to symbols of the old world, refusing to go? Or was it more peaceful? A general consensus that it was time, that they'd done what they could with physical existence, and it was time to try something else. Did they have children? And if so, what did they tell them? Pack your things, we're leaving the planet. Or did they not think of it in those terms at all? Maybe by then, they were so far beyond biology that concepts like children didn't apply anymore. Did they leave messages for us? Or did they assume no one would come after? Maybe they thought they'd used up Earth's one chance at intelligence, that once they left, that was it. The experiment was over. If so, they were wrong. Here we are. I hope they'd be pleased. Or maybe they're not pleased. Maybe they're watching us stumble through the same mistakes they made, and they're frustrated. No, don't do it that way. We tried that. It doesn't work. But unable to intervene. Or unwilling. Some kind of cosmic non-interference policy. Let each civilization figure it out on their own. Or fail on their own. That's assuming they still exist in any form we could call they. Maybe after transcending, or whatever they did, individuality stopped being meaningful. Maybe they're more like a collective consciousness now. Or maybe they dispersed entirely into whatever substrate of reality they moved into. Maybe they're everywhere and nowhere, part of the background hum of existence. And occasionally, someone sensitive, a mystic, an artist, a physicist in the right frame of mind, catches a glimpse, hears an echo, gets a sense of vast presence just beyond perception, and makes art about it, or writes poems, or develops equations that describe something that shouldn't be describable. String theory, quantum entanglement, the holographic principle. What if these aren't just human discoveries about the nature of reality? What if they're half-remembered instructions, breadcrumbs left behind? Look here, the breadcrumbs say. This is important. This is how reality actually works. This is how you leave when you're ready. But I'm getting abstract again. Let me come back to something concrete. There's a project, NASA funds it, along with some private donors, called SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They use radio telescopes to listen for signals from space that might indicate intelligent life. They haven't found anything. At least, nothing confirmed. Lots of interesting signals over the years, but none that definitely say intelligent origin. This has led to various explanations. Maybe we're alone. Maybe intelligence is extremely rare. Maybe other civilizations exist, but radio communication is a brief phase in technological development, and we keep missing each other in time. Maybe the distances are just too vast. But here's another possibility. Maybe SETI is looking in the wrong direction. Not outward into space, but inward into Earth itself, into deep time. What if we started seriously looking for evidence of previous civilizations, not assuming we won't find anything, but actively searching with the expectation that we might? Look for anomalies, chemical signatures, mathematical patterns in geological structures, biological oddities that might indicate genetic manipulation, unusual isotope ratios, anything that doesn't fit the simple story of lifeless Earth until recently. We'd need new techniques, new ways of thinking about evidence, new methodologies for detecting the nearly undetectable. But it's possible, in theory. And the discovery, if we found something definitive, would change everything. Absolutely everything. It would mean we're not alone, never were. Not in space, perhaps, but in time. On our own world. It would mean that intelligence can survive, can transcend, can leave without dying. It would give us hope in a way. Proof that there's a path forward. An escape from the various apocalypses we're worried about. Or it might terrify us. Proof that even advanced civilizations can fail so badly they have to flee their own world. Maybe both. I had a dream once. Vivid enough that I still remember it years later. I was standing on a beach, familiar somehow, though I couldn't place it. Sunset. The water was that particular color it gets when the sun's low, all gold and orange and impossible to capture in photos even though everyone tries. And there were structures in the water. Not ruins exactly, more like shapes, geometric forms just beneath the surface, visible through the waves. Vast, ancient, too regular to be natural but too weathered to be recent. I waded in. The water was warm, and as I got deeper, the structures became clearer. Pillars, arches, platforms, all overgrown with algae and barnacles, but unmistakably made, built, designed. I touched one of the pillars. The stone was smooth, cold despite the warm water, and there was a vibration, barely perceptible but there, like the stone was humming at a frequency just below hearing. And I understood, in the way you understand things in dreams without being told, that this was old. Not thousands of years old, not millions, older. So old the numbers didn't mean anything. And I understood that the people who built it were gone. Not dead, gone. Somewhere else. Somewhere the dream couldn't show me because I didn't have the concepts to understand it, but they'd left the structures. Not as monuments, not as messages, just as remnants. The way you might leave footprints in sand without meaning to. Evidence of passage. I woke up with my heart pounding. That particular kind of dream intensity where you're not sure if you actually dreamed it or experienced something real in some sense you can't define. Probably just a dream. But sometimes I wonder. There's a line from an old poem, I forget the author. We are not the first. We will not be the last. But we are here now, and that matters. Something like that. The idea being that we're part of a continuity, a chain. Not the beginning and not the end, just a link. I find that oddly comforting. The idea that we're not carrying the entire burden of being the only intelligent life in Earth's history. That others came before. That others will come after. It takes the pressure off, in a way. We don't have to be perfect. Don't have to solve everything. Don't have to last forever. We just have to do our part. Add our link to the chain. Pass something forward. Maybe that's what the previous ones did. Their part. And then they left, trusting that the chain would continue without them. That Earth would try again. And here we are, trying. But what do we pass forward? Knowledge, obviously. Technology, art, the accumulated wisdom of our species. But also, the unfinished business. The problems we couldn't solve. The questions we couldn't answer. The mysteries we encountered but couldn't explain. Like the mystery of them. The ones before. Maybe we pass that forward too, along with our own mysteries, so that whoever comes after us, if anyone does, has both puzzles to work on, theirs and ours. Mystery as inheritance. I kind of like that idea. Let me talk about time again for a moment. The way it feels versus the way it is.
A human lifetime feels long when you're living it. Decades. Enough time for loves and losses and 1,000 small stories. Enough time to matter. But in geological terms, in evolutionary terms, a human lifetime is nothing. A blink. Less than a blink. Our entire species, Homo sapiens, has only existed for maybe 300,000 years. That's nothing. A tiny fraction of Earth's history. Recorded history is only about 5,000 years. Writing, agriculture, cities, all of civilization as we usually think of it. 5,000 years. That's not even a rounding error in geological time. So when we look at Earth's history and say, nothing intelligent happened before humans, what we really mean is, nothing intelligent happened in the tiny fraction of time we can easily study. The rest is unknown. Not knowable in the simple way. Too deep, too eroded, too transformed. But that doesn't mean nothing happened. It just means we don't know. And there's something valuable in not knowing, in acknowledging mystery. Modern culture doesn't like mystery much. We like answers, explanations, things tied up neatly. But some questions don't have neat answers. Some mysteries remain mysterious. And that's okay. Better than okay, actually. Mystery is what drives exploration. If we knew everything, why would we keep looking? The possibility that Earth had previous intelligent inhabitants, that's a mystery worth holding, worth exploring. Even if we never find definitive proof, the search itself teaches us things. It teaches us humility. We're not necessarily first or special. It teaches us to look carefully, to notice anomalies, to question assumptions. And it teaches us to think in deep time, to see ourselves as part of a much longer story than just our individual lives, or even our species' tenure on this planet. There's an old practice. I think it comes from some Native American tribes, though I might be misremembering, of making decisions with 7 generations in mind. Not just what's best for us now, but what's best for our children's children's children, out to 7 generations. It's a way of thinking beyond the immediate, of acknowledging continuity. But what if we pushed that further? What if we thought not 7 generations forward, but 7 civilizations forward? What would we do differently? What would we build that could last millions of years? What messages would we leave? What gifts would we prepare for those who come after? And what would we want to find if previous civilizations had thought that way? Instructions, maybe. Warnings. Maps. Here's what worked for us.
Here's what failed. Here's where we went and how we got there. Or maybe just reassurance. You're not alone. Others have walked this path. You can too.
I think that's what I want, if they really existed.
If the first civilization really left Earth, I want to find their message. Not technology necessarily, not artifacts or ruins, just a message that says, we were here. We struggled with the same questions. We found a way forward. So can you. That would be enough. That would be everything. But maybe I'm being too sentimental, too human in my thinking. Maybe they don't think in terms of messages or reassurance. Maybe, to them, it's all just process. Emergence and transcendence and entropy. No sentiment attached. Or maybe they do care, but can't communicate across the vast gulf of time and transformation. Like trying to explain color to someone who's never seen, or music to someone who's never heard. The concepts don't translate. We're using different languages, different paradigms, different modes of being. And so we're left with fragments, hints, suggestions, which might be all we're meant to find. Not answers, but directions. Not conclusions, but beginnings. There's a concept in Zen Buddhism, beginner's mind. The idea that you approach things openly, without preconceptions, the way a beginner would, not weighed down by expertise or assumptions. Maybe that's how we need to approach this question, with beginner's mind. Not asking, did they exist, with all our preconceptions about what evidence should look like, but asking, what would we find if they did exist? And then looking with fresh eyes. Not assuming absence of evidence means evidence of absence, but assuming we might not recognize evidence even if we're looking right at it. Beginner's mind, open, curious, willing to be wrong. I'm getting philosophical again. Let me bring it back to something specific. Antarctica. We don't talk about Antarctica enough in these conversations. It's a continent larger than Europe, covered in ice miles thick. And beneath that ice, land, mountains, valleys, lakes. We've barely explored beneath the ice. Don't really know what's down there. The ice makes it difficult, expensive, technically challenging. But what if there's something under there? Not aliens, not Atlantis, but evidence of the ones who came before us. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. At various points in Earth's history, it was temperate, even tropical in some periods. Plants grew there, animals lived there, and if a civilization existed long ago, before the ice, they might have built there, thrived there. And then the climate changed. The ice came. Miles of ice, covering everything, preserving everything, like a time capsule we haven't opened yet. We have technology now that can see through ice, ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, satellite analysis. What if we really looked, really mapped what's under all that ice? Would we find anything unusual? Anomalies that don't fit natural formations? We probably wouldn't. Probably just rock and ice and ancient lake beds. But maybe, just maybe. The thing about speculation, responsible speculation, is knowing when to stop. When you've pushed the idea as far as it can go without more evidence. And I think I'm approaching that point. I've laid out the case as best I can. The fragments of evidence, the patterns, the possibilities. Are they conclusive? No, not even close. Could they all be explained by natural phenomena, coincidence, and human pattern seeking? Absolutely. But could they also be hints of something real? Something profound? Yes, they could be. And that's enough. Enough to keep the question open, enough to keep looking. Because if they existed, if the first civilization really did leave Earth, then finding definitive proof would be the most important discovery in human history. It would rewrite everything, every assumption about our place in the universe, every notion of what intelligence is and where it goes. It would give us hope or warning or both. And it would connect us to a deeper story, a longer chain, a continuity stretching back hundreds of millions of years. We wouldn't be alone anymore. Not in the cosmic sense. We'd be part of something larger. So what do we do with this possibility? We stay curious. We keep looking. We don't dismiss anomalies just because they don't fit our models. We update our models instead. We fund research into deep time, into unusual geological formations, into biological oddities, into mathematical patterns that shouldn't be there. We apply new technologies, AI for pattern recognition, quantum sensors, advanced imaging, to old questions. We approach Earth itself as an archaeological site, not just the last few thousand years, but the last few billion. And we stay open to surprise, to discovery, to the possibility that everything we thought we knew might need revision. That's the scientific method, after all. Not holding on to certainty, but updating beliefs based on new evidence. And personally, on an individual level, we can look up at the stars and wonder if they're out there somewhere. The ones who left. If they're watching, if they care. We can look down at the ground beneath our feet and wonder what stories it holds, what layers of history we're walking on. We can tell stories, make art, write equations, ask questions. We can pass the mystery forward, add our own chapter to whatever book is being written. And we can live with the uncertainty, the not knowing, because some of the best things in life are uncertain. Love, art, the future. Mystery isn't a flaw to be fixed. It's a space to be inhabited, a space where possibilities live. So here's my conclusion, such as it is. Did a previous civilization leave Earth? I don't know. Could they have? Yes, absolutely. The pieces fit. Will we ever know for certain? Maybe. If we look hard enough, if we're lucky, if the evidence survived. And does it matter? Yes, it matters. Not just for the factual knowledge, though that would be revolutionary, but for what it does to how we see ourselves. If we're not the first, we're part of a tradition, a legacy, a pattern. And if others left before us, then leaving is possible. Transcendence is possible. There's a way forward beyond the various crises we face. That's worth knowing, or at least worth hoping. The last thing I'll say is this. Late at night, when sleep won't come and your mind wanders, allow yourself to wonder, to really wonder. What if they existed? What if they're still out there, somewhere we can't perceive? What if they left messages we haven't learned to read yet? What if we're following in their footsteps without knowing it? What if the path forward is also the path they took? These questions don't have answers. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But they're worth asking. Because in the asking, we expand our sense of what's possible. We become a little less certain and a little more curious. A little less alone and a little more connected. To the deep past, to the uncertain future, to possibilities we can barely imagine. And maybe, just maybe, one day we'll find out. Not from a textbook or a scientific paper, but from direct experience. Maybe one day we'll face our own choice, to stay or to leave, to remain physical or to transcend, to continue the pattern or to break it. And when that day comes, if it comes, we'll think of them, the first ones, the leavers, and we'll understand, finally, fully understand, what it means to outgrow your cradle, what it means to become something more, what it means to leave Earth behind, not with sadness but with gratitude, for everything it gave us, everything it taught us, everything it allowed us to become. And then we'll go, following the path they made, adding our own footsteps to the trail, continuing the journey into whatever comes next. But that's far future speculation. Maybe. For now, we're here, on Earth, human, limited, looking up, looking down, looking inward, wondering, and in the wondering, in the questioning, in the searching, maybe we're already starting the journey. Maybe we've already begun to leave, in the only way that matters. Not physically, but conceptually. Not our bodies, but our minds. Reaching towards something larger, something more, something they understood long ago, and left behind for us to discover. When we were ready. Are we ready? I don't know. But I think we're getting close. I think we're starting to see the shapes in the water, the patterns in the stone, the messages in the deep layers. We're starting to read the palimpsest, starting to understand the story. And once you start to understand, you can't unknow it. You can't go back to thinking we're alone, we're first, we're all there is. You have to move forward, into the mystery, into the possibility, into whatever truth is waiting. And maybe, when we get there, we'll find them, or what they became, or the space they left for us, the empty cradle, waiting for the next child, the cleared stage, waiting for the next act, the open door, waiting for us to step through. When we're ready, when we've learned what we need to learn, when we've become what we need to become. And then we'll know, for certain, what it means that the first civilization left Earth, and what it means that we're next.